Hey, I want to talk about something I like to think of as the missing horoscope. When women come to me and they're wanting me to look at their relationships, their past relationships, and find out whether or not that, this was a good relationship for them, but they don't have one critical piece of information, I like to think of it as a ghost horoscope. That if only they had that piece, then I could give them a much better, a more fleshed out insight into what was going on in that relationship. So what is the missing horoscope? Well, it's the horoscope of the other person that they were dating. Because without it, it's almost like you are only seeing half the person. If you've heard of synastry, that's where you take two horoscopes and you sort of meld them together and it creates the horoscope of that relationship, of that couple. Except when you have the timing, this takes it a whole step further. You can think of your horoscope like a wheel, and all of the different planets, the positions when you were born, are scattered around that wheel. And then the time, it's almost like a dial. It dials in exactly where those planets are, because as you dial it, the different houses that your planets go into drastically change different outcomes, different things that your soul is wanting at different times in your life. Unfortunately, even people that know a lot about astrology, love astrology, don't realize how important this chart is. And so, that can put me in a place where I can be asked difficult questions about that relationship. And I have to say, well, I don't really know. I could only really tell you from the point of view of what I can see that your soul was wanting at that moment based on your timing. It makes it much more difficult to be able to give that whole picture, right? Because now I'm only looking at half of the story. I'm only looking at her half of the story. And often what I see when it's just her half of the story is a much rosier picture than if I had both sides of the story, because often women are very in touch with their intuition. And so they are intuitively choosing someone that they are truly wanting to be with, truly feeling drawn towards. Whereas their partners, their astrology is not so dialed in always. And when I see this discrepancy, that tells me that this person was maybe falling for someone who didn't have the best of intentions. So that's why it's so important to see the other person's timing. Their time of birth tells me all about what they were actually ready for at that moment in the world of relationships. Were they in a place where they were ready to fully commit? Were they deeply in love? Or was there a part of them that's sort of hanging back? Now, when I can see into that person's timing, it's easier to start seeing similarities in the patterns that you might be experiencing when you are meeting someone new. And that shows me like the seed of those different relationships, and if those seeds look sort of similar to one another. When you start to be able to see this kind of patterning, if you've been struggling with very difficult relationships, gives you the sort of ability to realize, okay, I see this pattern happening again, and I'm going to be able to transmute it. I'm going to transform this. And that's really what timing does. It's that extra layer of expertise and depth that you can get only with having the timing of your person. So if you're wondering now, well, we've been broken up, but I do want to have access to that information. If you're still in a friendship and you feel comfortable with reaching out and asking them for their time, awesome. If you don't, just know for the future that that's the kind of information that it's great to have so that you can reference it for later. Because you had access to their timing, that's when movement really starts to happen. That's where you start to learn to be able to trust yourself. And it really comes down to having that access, having that insight. So I hope this helps. I hope it inspires you to start taking the time of the person that you are seeing, holding on to it so that you can feel more confident when you're starting a relationship that it might have the ability to grow.